What is up, guys? It is Murder here, and today we are going to be asking the ultimate question for Battlefield 1. Will it play the same as Battlefield 4 or any other previous Battlefield games? Now, if you guys have been living in a cave for the past few weeks, you would not know that EA has, or DICE has revealed the newest game in the Battlefield franchise, Battlefield 1, because it is going back to World War 1.
Come on, then!
Most of you probably know World War 1 as just a complete trench fight and a stalemate. Those are two words that come to mind, trenches and stalemate. Alright? But unfortunately for you guys, you might be unaware that World War 1 wasn't exactly like that all the time. And many people before the release of the trailer were not aware of that as well. So the trailer kind of shows that the game is going to be very exciting. And so today I'm just going to kind of spark a discussion and, you know, give my points. And hopefully you guys will leave your points in the comments or just by a rating on this video. So, the main question here is will it play the same? Now, just because the game is World War 1 doesn't mean movement, you know, all the stuff that we know that's very genuine with the Battlefield franchise, how you can move so easily, you know, vault over things. I suspect all of that being the same. However, with gunplay and how slow vehicles were back then, for example, tanks. I know most tanks weren't expected to go very fast. I believe I don't even know the exact model of the tank, but the first model of the British tank that was actually seen in war, I think would go up to like 4 miles an hour. I could be wrong. I'm not a history buff in World War 1. However, I believe it was roughly 4 miles an hour. It was mainly used to help push enemy lines, because the only thing that soldiers couldn't do is push enemy lines. So, I mean, the tank that you see in Battlefield 4, like the M1 Abrams, which is an American classic tank, can cap around 40 miles an hour. So 4 and 40 miles an hour are definitely different. Now, are the maps going to be smaller to compensate? That's a pretty big question, because obviously you're going to have, I'm assuming you'll have, like, you know, motorcycles or some kind of other transport that'll be a little bit faster than tanks. However, will it be fast enough to, like, you know, be able to take you from point A to point B with how big the gap is between point A and point B in Battlefield 4. In Battlefield 4, a lot of people don't like the maps being the size that they are. However, only certain parts of each map are actually used in Battlefield 4. Those going along with like certain conquest points or certain high traffic areas where you'd have to like go through to get to different points. Now, I believe that the maps are going to be smaller in my point of view. I don't see how enlarging them in any way or keeping them the size that they are would be any like use or would make the game any easier for players. It would probably make people more annoyed because they wouldn't be able to travel as fast. Another thing is, aerial combat is going to be very, very different. We've never had aerial combat that's going to be as, I guess, slow and as calm as World War 1. We had Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield 1943. Both of those had, you know, planes that were not jets. I don't know, what do you call them? Propeller planes? I'm not exactly sure, alright? But they had propellers, correct? And they were not, you know, powered by jet fuel, okay? So, the issue with that is that I believe it'll make aerial combat a lot more fun. It'll make dogfighting much more skill-based. Even though it is pretty skill-based now, I think there'll be a larger skill gap because you'll have to learn how to, you know, use your plane to your advantage. And I'm sure that different planes will have, like, you know, different speeds and different abilities, because in World War 1, planes were very different, as well as tanks and other vehicles that were, you know, being invented at that time. So I think aerial combat's going to be very different, and a lot of people don't really point this out, but this is going to be one of the only Battlefield games that does not actually include a helicopter. Even back in Battlefield Bad Company 1, Battlefield Bad Company 2, those both had helicopters instead of jets, so that was kind of the aerial combat scenario in there. Obviously, 1943 and 1942 did not, and even the 2142, that didn't really withhold any, I guess, helicopters, but it did have, aerial vehicles that I guess you could kind of relate to helicopters. So being a game where I'm assuming aerial combat will be very popular, not having helicopters, I think that's going to be a big issue as far as map transportation. That's why I also would, agree with the fact that the maps are going to be smaller. It's almost like they have to be at this point. It's not necessarily just because they got lazy. So if you guys do see the maps are smaller, don't be upset. I'm suspecting that they'll be smaller, and I'm sure if they were larger, then you would end up probably being the most bored World War I soldier in the history of the world. Actually, that's not true. But on my point of view, I want to see what you guys think about this, because I mean, I think it's almost like a giveaway, and most people might kind of maim me for even pointing it out, saying, "Oh, you're stupid. Obviously, it's gotta be smaller." I'm just giving my point of view on the whole Battlefield 1 situation, because it is very, very different from what we've seen in the past years. Also, gunplay. Guns were much slower back then. Obviously, there were machine guns, like the Maxim. I'm sure there were some iterations of a portable machine gun back then, even though I don't think we really saw the rise of that until early World War II. However, I'm sure there were some automatic weaponry being developed at that time. So, other than stationary weapons, I don't really think you're not going to see a wide variety of portable machine guns, which you're going to be basically stuck with either bolt action or semi-automatic rifles, and I'm completely okay with that, because I really do enjoy using DMRs in Battlefield 4. So with that in mind, gunplay is going to be very, very different. Now, is this going to make it to where you have to, I guess, you won't have to put as many bullets into somebody, people will die quicker? I think that is a pretty good estimate, just because, when you think of Battlefield 4, you want to have a reaction time. At least the people who don't play hardcore and just play regular, I think the whole reason behind having a large amount of health is that you can actually react whenever you're getting shot. And I think even if you have a semi-automatic rifle that will kill you in, let's say, 3 bullets, 3 bullets, I think that still will give you a decent amount of reaction time to, I guess, be able to duck and cover, or, turn around and try to shoot back. It just depends on the type of weapons. Honestly, I'm fine with anything as long as it ends up being balanced in the final iteration of the game. So, I want to see what you guys think about that. Do you think guns will be, I guess, do you think gunplay will feel the same? Do you think it'll feel a bit more spaced out? People won't go as close up anymore? Or do you think melee will kind of just since melee is probably going to be a pretty big portion of this game, just because, I mean, in World War I, when you'd get in close quarters like that, when you'd go into a trench of an enemy, why would your choice of weaponry be a semi-automatic rifle? You're probably going to stick with, your combat shovel, or, your bayonet, whatever you may have on you. So, I mean, melee could completely, replace close quarters combat, and just kind of put guns out the window, and, just take over that whole situation in game. Which I think will be really interesting if you have people, instead of, SMG fights for a point, or just, chucking grenades all the time. I think it'd be kind of cool seeing, actual, bayonet charges, or different combat scenarios where, you'd be kind of, trying to get the first hit on somebody, or trying to assassinate them by going up behind them, or doing something like that. I think that'll be really cool to see, and I'm really excited about that. Now, lastly, what I want to talk about is how vehicle play will actually come into play, I guess. So, I mean, now tanks, tank fights are a lot of just trying to move around, trying to get the hit on the back of the enemy's tank, as best as you can, and then just obviously trying to land as many hits as you can in the amount of time that you're given. Now, in World War One, you obviously couldn't reload a tank remotely as fast as you can now, because now, at least in the M1 Abrams, it's completely automatic, and then back then, in those tanks, you'd have to have it manually installed. Now, I obviously don't think there's gonna be a reloader. I don't even know if that's the actual like profession name for that position, but the person who will reload the actual rounds, I don't think that's gonna be the case, and I think it's pretty obvious that it won't be the case, because I don't think anybody's gonna have any fun just reloading ammunition for the whole game. But you gotta kind of wonder how many tank rounds it'll take to actually, penetrate another tank's armor, or if what kind of like ammunition that a soldier might have on them, or what they could pick up, because I mean there were some high caliber rounds that could still pierce through armor. Obviously it's not going to be very deep and not probably go all the way through and actually like hit somebody on the inside, but I mean there were some rounds or some types of ammunition that would actually penetrate through tank armor back then. I don't know if that's going to really be the case. Maybe it could lead up to, like, if your entire team had those type of weapons, you could lay down fire on a tank, so it'll maybe keep them back, kind of like suppressing a tank. I think that'd be kind of cool to see. With tanks being as slow as they are, as slow as they were back then, I don't think you're going to see like armored combat nearly as much as you do now. I don't think you're going to see a lot of vehicle combat besides aerial stuff with those biplanes and triplanes, stuff like that. So, I honestly think this game is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be very different. I don't think it's going to be very similar to what we've seen with other Battlefield games. I think it's going to really try to change the whole Battlefield in general, I guess. Like, it's not going to be the same. Things are going to be slower. Things will probably go at a slower pace unless you do get up close, and then it might start to pick up. I don't think you're gonna see vehicles being as prominent, because as you see now in Battlefield 4, you can pretty much grab, like, you're not too far from a vehicle at any point in the game, unless you're like in the back of the map or something like that, stranded. So you're obviously kind of like moving around whenever you choose to get to other points very fast. And as far as vehicle combat with infantry combat goes, I think it'll be much more balanced in a sense, because you see in Battlefield now, unless you have an engineer at a certain point on the map, so if you're on like Gallman Railway or something like that, a lot of people like to take the tanks on the inside of the city. So the thing is if you don't have an engineer or somebody that could actually make it their goal to take out that tank, if you just have a bunch of assault class medics, you're gonna be kind of screwed. And back then that wasn't really prominent. It was much more of a difficult task if the enemy had a tank. So you'd actually have to like come together a little bit more to figure out how to take it down. I don't think you're gonna have to do as much planning, obviously, to like actually like worry about taking it down, but I do think you're gonna actually like need people to do things for you. Like, you're gonna need, like, in your squad, it's gonna be necessary for the squad to kind of split up as far as classes go, who does what and who has what, because if a tank rolls up at your point, it's just going to obliterate everything there. I mean, there's no way you're gonna get out of there with a bunch of medics, because what explosives are they gonna have to even do any real damage to that thing when it can fire back, of course. So with that in mind, I think that team play is going to be a lot better in this game, which I'm really excited about, because team play is strongly lacking in Battlefield 4, considering about the only class you really see is assault or engineer. You'll see a couple snipers, and support are just almost not even there, sadly. So I'm really excited for this game. I hope you guys are too. Make sure to leave your comments about every point of view that you guys might have, every topic that I covered. I'm really excited to see what other people have to say. Leave a like down below if you enjoyed this video, and then leave a like if you if you know I think it was a good idea to like if some of my ideas were actually good, and then dislike the video if you think everything I said was just complete bullshit. Alright, have a nice day guys, and goodbye.